Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden, whichever one you prefer, are the weakest Persona games. Like, I'm actually kind of disappointed that they're remaking Persona 4 instead of, bringing back Persona 1 and 2, But then again, if Persona 1 and 2 got remakes, then, people online would still complain and moan about them anyway. However, Persona 4, a persona of the modern Persona games, it's not even really modern no more because Persona 3 is like a decade old or 2 decades old. However, Persona 4 is the weakest of the Persona trilogy, which is Persona 3, 4, and 5. Both all three of these games have slice of life elements, dating aspects. Uh, goodness gracious. A lot of what Persona 4 and 5 do copy Persona 3 essentially. Sometimes they do it better, sometimes they do it worse. But overall, Persona 4 is the worst game of the series. And don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game at all. It's a perfectly good, competent game. This game, Persona 4, has actually changed a lot of people's lives. I've seen articles of it. And you know what? Good for them. I never got the appeal, but good for them. I remember being a poor teenager in high school. I heard Persona 4 was coming out on the PS Vita. I didn't have a PS Vita. My family could only afford to get me a PSP because, we were broke. And Persona 4 Golden wasn't coming on the PSP. It sucks. And I kept looking up reviews of it on YouTube. This game had all sorts of 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s. I was like, wow, Persona 3 Portable, that game is already really good. Man, I bet Persona 4 Golden is a million times better. Then finally, I eventually got a PS3, downloaded Persona 4, and it was all right. It was pretty average. No, it's not average. It was above. It's an above average game. Like it's a good game. It's a good. Well, Jesus Christ, what's going on? It's a good, competent game, and I was like, wow. People say that this game is better than Persona 3 and Persona 5 because let's look at Jesus, I'm stuttering. Let's look at what Persona 3 and 5 have over Persona 4. Music, nope. Persona 3 and Persona 5 especially have better music than Persona 4. Graphics and design, well, Persona 3 has a much more creepy aesthetic and design, and Persona 5 is just super stylistic. So overall, they both outshine Persona 4. Persona 4 feels very basic, and you know what? A lot of people might say that's the point, to make the whole slice of life feeling feel dull or whatever. You know what? But even then, the dungeons in Persona 4 are just trash. Also, that intro music that plays before you go exploring in a dungeon in Persona 4 is really trash. I don't care how... the music in the game is mostly good, but that intro music, nah, doesn't do it, chief. The characters in Persona 4 are worse than the ones in Persona 3 and 5 because, I like how the Persona 3 characters were friends, but would still, argue and disagree with each other. And in Persona 5, the characters in that game are just likable as a whole. Persona 4's characters, they're not bad or anything. They're just not as memorable as the ones in Persona 3 and Persona 5. Naoto, she's one of the most popular characters in the Persona series for whatever reason. And I did her social link, and it was just so boring and dull. Don't get me wrong. She has a great design, great voice actress, useful in battle, but her social link, man, it sucked. I don't remember a single thing about her social link. And speaking of social links, Persona 4 has the worst social links in the entire franchise. They're either... most of them are either really forgettable or just really... Actually, no. Most of them are just forgettable. That's their biggest crime. I know people hate that fat kid in Persona 3, and I know that people hate Kenji in Persona 3 because their social links are just relatively unlikable, However, at least you remember how terrible those social links were. Persona 4 doesn't have any terrible social links because the characters in that game are just so, dull and, they don't stand out that you don't really notice you can't really remember much. Now, the Fox Social Link, that one sucks because at least with Social Links, you usually get some sort of character development, right? Not with the Fox Social Link. No, this guy has you do all sorts of random, boring fetch quests in order to, increase his social rank, his friendship. And God, do they suck. They all suck because, like, the exchanges is that if you help out this Fox, you're basically helping out the town, which is really inconsequential anyway, because the NPCs in Persona 4 aren't that interesting anyway. But anyway, you do the Fox Social Link, you fulfill random requests, aka Fox quests, and yeah, they're just really boring and uninteresting because most of the quests just revolve around getting something for a person, and they're basically just fetch quests. Then the Fox does like a little dance around the shrine or whatever and celebrates. But overall, though, it's not anything special. And plus, that Fox has no character development. You might be saying, well, yeah, it's just an animal. What do you expect? But then again, Persona 5 has a cat as an animal, and that cat has development. Persona 3 has Koromaru. That's the dog that helps you fight shadows, and that even Koromaru has more of a character than that lame Fox Social Link in Persona 4. I just really hate that Social Link, especially when I'm playing Persona 4 and I'm trying to go for all the social links. Especially the last quest where you gotta catch a fish. It's RNG. Like, this certain fish that you need is RNG. And what's funny, in the original Persona 4 on PS2 or PS3, that fish, you only had to catch one fish. And Persona 4 Golden, they made it even worse. You had to catch two fish. Now, Persona 4 Golden gives you more time to catch that fish. But still, though, having to get two, it was already a big enough chore as it was in the original. And I wouldn't mind this if it were fun, but the problem is that Persona 4 Golden's side quests aren't that fun. Man, it's really... Oh, man, what else? A lot of the nighttime social links just aren't that interesting. Anyway, let's go on to characters and story. Persona 4 has a fine story. It's fine. A lot of it, is copy. A lot of it is copy and pasted from Persona 3, though. I mean, Jesus Christ, even the shadows that you fought in Persona 3 are just straight up reused in Persona 4 unapologetically. And you know what's funny? In Persona 3, they actually gave some lore and, just some lore about how shadows affect reality and whatnot in Persona 3. In Persona 4, shadows just exist because, hey, why not? They're in the TV. No big deal. They can't really hurt or kill people in real life. As long as they don't go inside the TV universe. And, I felt like, well, geez, they didn't even really try with that. Now, apparently, although there is another thing, apparently shadows in Persona 4 are basically the darker sides of people who don't want to face themselves. And, I get the whole message. Everybody has a side of themselves that they don't like seeing, like a quote-unquote dark side or whatever. I feel like Persona 5 did that way better, though. Yeah. But, oh man, the final boss in Persona 4 sucks. It sucks so much because it literally comes right out of nowhere. It has no character development. Oh, wow. So basically this goddess gives the main character persona powers at the start of the game with a handshake. And then she's all surprised and stuff when when the protagonist uses those powers, to fight back against her. What's her name? Izanagi or whatever. And she's like a secret boss too. It just doesn't feel as tense. Like with Nyx in Persona 3, you felt that feeling of dread for at least 2 months of the game. Holy crap, Nyx is coming up. This is going to be the fight of their lives. We might die. All the characters felt very, it felt very panicked about that. Also, the characters had to face the reality that if they get rid of the Dark Hour in Persona 3, then they're going to lose their powers and whatnot, and basically lose what made them special, even though part of the game is realizing that, hey, they were actually already special, with or without the powers. But, Nyx is just one of the coolest boss fights, or final boss fights in the Persona game. And, with Izanagi, there's just no build-up at all, she just exists. And why does she want to cover the town in fog? Why does she want to just do a mass genocide? Because hey, this is a JRPG. JRPGs need to have you fight God at the end. And there's some Persona 4 fanboys. They'll give out the excuse like, "Oh, you need to go look up the lore. Look up the lore about Izanagi, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, who cares? You know, like if I have to do homework before playing a game, then that really goes to show that maybe the game's story and lore probably aren't that good to begin with. To be honest, like imagine having to do research about Nyx just to find out why Nyx wants to destroy the world, rather than the game, actually doing that for you within the story and writing. Combat. Well, one thing about Persona 4 that's really nice is that you can. It was the well, no, it's not the first Persona game, but unlike Persona 3, you can finally fully control the party members. Hooray! Huzzah! That was one of the biggest problems with the original Persona 3 is that you couldn't fully control the party. They were mostly controlled by AI. Yes, there was a tactics menu, but that tactics menu was very flawed. Like you could set the characters to do a certain thing, and they won't do what you want. Like I remember having them. I remember like having Yukari. I wanted her to use her wind weaknesses on shadows, and instead of using attacks that would attack all the shadows at once, she would attack them individually. I thought that was just terrible gameplay. I'm glad Persona 3 Portable and Reload let you actually control the party. But anyway, Persona 4's combat though it's actually more dumbed down than Persona. Not only is it more dumbed down than Persona 3, it's also more dumbed down compared to Persona 5 because Persona 5 adds in some new stuff and also has two types of physical attacks. Persona 3 has three types of physical attacks, and you can also equip shoes, Persona 4 Golden just simplifies that. You don't have to equip shoes or nothing like that. And there's only one type of physical attack. So apparently, according to Persona 4's logic, getting shot with a gun is the same as getting punched or stabbed with a sword. So I thought that was pretty lame. And these Persona games though they're not really challenging. They're nothing like Dark Souls or anything like that. Oh Jesus Christ! All right, my bad. I'm playing this game one-handed, and I was trying to do this mission without, starting any alerts or whatnot. But anyway, I record with my phone because in case I want to edit, it's just easier to do it on the app rather than doing it on the TV or whatever. I don't really need any fancy pants editing or nothing. But anyway, what I was talking about, Persona games, they're not really supposed to be that challenging. Like, it's very obvious that Atlus, even for Persona 3 FES, where you can't control the characters, it's very obvious that Atlus wanted to aim Persona at a much more casual audience compared to SMT, because, SMT it's not only harder gameplay-wise, but, it's also, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less generic than Persona. SMT has philosophical themes and whatnot that a lot of people don't really care or want to think about in their video game. Completely understandable. And Persona 4, or actually just Persona games as a whole, are just a lot more simple. Even Persona 2. And man, don't get me wrong, I have issues with Persona 2 as well. Oh man, this made it worse. I can't see in this sandstorm. But overall though, Persona 4's combat just isn't as interesting or as fun compared to Persona 3 Reload or Persona 5. I would say it's still better than Persona 3 FES because you can control the characters. But I'll take Persona 5's gameplay. And I know it's not really that fair to compare gameplay, but to be fair, they are the same. They are in the same series. It's just that Persona 5 has more advanced technology and whatnot. Alright, so what else? What other issues did I have with Persona 4? Well, a lot of people think Akechi is one of the best villains in the franchise. I'm not really going to speak... I mean, I guess so, but one of the greatest villains I've ever seen? Nah, he wouldn't... oh, wait, I said Akechi. I meant Adachi. Jesus Christ. Man, screw Atlas's names. Adechi. Adechi is not that interesting of a villain in my opinion. I mean, he wouldn't even crack top 30 in my anime villains list, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, he's an interesting character. He's voiced by the same guy that did Ichigo's voice in Bleach, Johnny Young Botch, or however you pronounce it. You know, he has a great voice, great design. You know, I like how he is. I like how he is manipulative, but you know, Adachi just doesn't really have much development. That's my issue with him. You know, he's not as he's not a. I don't know. I've just seen better villains. You know, I'll just pull up pictures right here that are of villains in anime that I think are way better than Adachi. Like, sorry, Adachi fans, I just don't really find that this character that interesting. I mean, he's fine though. I was going to say though, in Persona series though, these games don't really have the best villains when you think about it. I mean, Takaya and Jin from Persona 3, they're pretty lame. Like, Takaya is literally just a crazy shirtless homeless man who waves around a gun, and he did it. And yeah, he does shoot Shinji in Persona 3, but the game really implies that Shinji was going to die anyway. But Persona 5, I actually kind of prefer Persona 5's villains, to be honest. Like, you know, yeah, they are a little bit more evil for the sake of being evil, but they put up a way more interesting fight. Like, that Shido boss fight in Persona 5 is way more cool and way better than any boss fight in Persona 4, especially the boss fight against Adachi. Um, let's see. Let's talk about the main cast of characters. Like I said earlier, I don't find them as interesting as the cast of characters in Persona 3 and 5. Let's see. Let's go with the main protagonist, Yu. Well, he's the silent protagonist, and he's probably the most popular, like literally the most popular protagonist. Not talking about by fans, but I'm talking about within the lore itself. Because Yu is a new student, and he's already immediately well liked by all the other students. I didn't like that, to be honest. I feel like Yu's kind of a Gary Stu, to be honest. I like how in Persona 5, when the protagonist goes to a new school, you know, everybody hates him because they heard he has a criminal record. You know, they hear all these sort of bad rumors about him, and that's way more interesting than everybody just immediately loving Yu, the Persona 4 protagonist. Um, uh, so yeah, don't get me wrong, he's not bad or nothing like that, but he doesn't feel he doesn't feel like that much of a realistic teenager compared to what we got in Persona 5. The Persona 3 protagonist, well, I don't know, because he also has the same situation as Yu does. He goes to a new school and he's kind of already pretty popular. But I don't care. I just like Ren the most. Okay, Yosuke. Yosuke is an okay bro character. And that's all I gotta say. He's okay. His parents run the mall that's apparently sinking the small town of Inaba into financial debt. Or it's probably not that bad, but his store, Junes, is causing a lot of businesses, you know, to struggle. And the game doesn't really commentate on that. Yosuke's family pretty much gets away with ruining all the small businesses of Inaba. And Yosuke's social link itself, you know, it's more about him, you know, not wanting. His social link's just not that. His social link's not that interesting. It's more about him having basic problems like, oh no, Saki's dead. Oh no, I don't want to take responsibility for the store. Oh no, I want to move somewhere else. And then he learns that, hey, he actually likes Inaba at the end. And then that's about it. Chie, she's okay. You know, she has an alright personality. Her voice in the original Persona 2 English dub sounds so weird. I know people prefer that old voice actor. Good for you, I guess. But she's just basic, though. What can I really say? She's into sports. She's a tomboy. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about Chie. Yukiko's also sort of the same. She's the pretty girl. Not really that interesting, boring social link. She's sort of like Yosuke. She wants to move out of Inaba, and then she learns at the end of her social link that she likes Inaba. Oh wow, woohoo! I guess I should also talk about their shadow selves as well. To be honest, the shadow versions of the main characters are actually more interesting and funny than the main characters themselves. Uh, let's see, Shadow Chie felt like I don't really get Shadow Chie's deal. To be honest, I don't really feel like remembering. To be honest, but even, that's another big issue though. Persona 4 literally has what it wastes two boss fights for the tutorial. You know, like Shadow Yosuke and Shadow Chie could have been their own arcs, but no, they're just so rushed because the game needs you to have a party members ASAP. You know. Whereas, you know, the other shadow characters have more depth put into them. So anyway, there's Kanji. Kanji's one of the most interesting. Kanji is like one of the strong points of Persona 4. Like, in a game that's full of, you know, decent characters, Kanji really stands out. He's also one of the most controversial characters because idiots online like to assume that he's gay or transsexual. That's not the case at all. No, his arc is literally him just, you know, being more sensitive and liking stuff that's depicted as more feminine, you know, like enjoying fixing dolls or whatever. And, you know, society unfortunately outcasts or sometimes outcasts men that are like that. And, you know, Kanji's whole thing is, you know what? He learns to accept his more sensitive side. There's nothing wrong with men being more sensitive. I feel like, I personally feel like the people that call Kanji gay or whatever not only miss the point, but they just assume that Kanji is gay because he's a man that likes more stuff that's depicted as feminine. That really just goes to show that you're basing his whole sexuality off of stereotypes. So in a way, if you're one of those people that call Kanji gay unironically, you're the bigot, in my opinion. He's not gay though. His shadow self is literally just a depiction of what Kanji is afraid of how other people will see him as like an overly sensitive man, you know, and you know, gay, which he's not. And the game doesn't say there's anything wrong with being gay either, but Kanji's not gay. Anyway, what other characters are in Persona 4 Golden? Oh yeah, there's Marie. She's not a party member, but she is a new character in Persona 4 Golden. A lot of people hate her for some reason. I not only did I find her design to be adorable, but her voice actor is great. Her design, I already said her design is good. Her social link is interesting. You know, with her trying to find out about herself, only for it to be revealed that she's like a goddess creature or whatever. You know, that was pretty cool. Her dungeon though, it does suck. But when people say that Mary is one of the most unlikable characters, I don't get it. Like, her poems are cringy, yes, but, you know, it's intentionally meant to be cringe, you know? She's even embarrassed by it. Like, that's the joke. And people are like, oh my god, this is one of the worst characters ever. I don't see it. I like, screw you guys. Speaking of characters I also think people give too much hate, let's talk about Teddy. Yeah, Teddy, okay, so he's a shadow bear person who was originally inside the TV. Then he finally gets out of the TV and he learns to experience the human world. Thankfully, he ended up in a town that's mostly first world and not a third world hellhole. So, you know, he has it pretty good. You know, Yosuke takes him in. He becomes the mascot of mascot. He becomes the mascot of Yosuke's capitalistic Junes store. And yeah, Teddy, in my opinion, is really funny. One thing I really do like about him is that when the main character got sick, Teddy actually took care of him and looked after him, and I thought that was really cool. I feel like Teddy gets way too much hate because Teddy's way less of a condescending jerk compared to other Persona characters like, I don't know, Morgana. And yeah, Teddy is cool. And Shadow Teddy is creepy. I really liked how Shadow Teddy was just some eldritch, creepy monster. Ugh, but okay, then there's Naoto. There's this Naoto is another controversial character because people are not even just a certain group of people immediately assume that Naoto is transgender because oh my gosh, Naoto wishes that she was a boy or whatever. When that's not really the case. You see, Naoto doesn't sexually want to become a man. Naoto sees men. No, Naoto realizes that men in society are taken more seriously, and I'm assuming that's especially for Japanese society, right? So she wants to, become a not literally, but she wants to have the same respect as a man, and that's why she dresses in pants and whatnot instead of wearing a skirt. Honestly, it's a really cool design, but it's very obvious that Naoto is female, and literally by the end of her social link. In fact, by the end of her arc or whatever, Naoto even embraces her femininity. Like, she's proud to be a woman and whatnot. Naoto is not transgender. Is not commentary on transgenderism or whatever. Is literally someone who just wants to be taken seriously. And, in Japan during the game's timeline, most people that were taken seriously were men in pants. Like, that's just the unfortunate truth. And Naoto wanted to prove that she was just as capable of being a detective. And by the end of the game, she realizes that hey, she doesn't have to dress up that way to to be taken seriously or whatever. She just has to be herself. But like I said earlier, though, her social link is very boring. I just skipped through most of her dialogue. I just don't remember any of her social link at all, man. Let's see. What other... did I talk about all the persona... Oh. Did I talk about all the other... Cut. Rise. I always forget Rise. Everybody's favorite freaking jailbait character, even though Japan's laws are totally different. But either way, Rise, she's okay. I like her optimism. And, actually, the start of her arc is interesting because it turns out she's not really this super extroverted, excited celebrity. No, at the start of when the characters finally meet Rise, she's not like she is on TV. She's tired. She's exhausted. She just wants to chill out, and just work at her, her grandma's food shop. I forgot the name of her grandma's tofu shop. And hey, she's voiced by Laura Bailey, that person who would go on to voice. Geez, Laura Bailey, she always gets cast as terrible characters for some reason. But thankfully, Rise is not terrible. Some people hate her. I never really understood why. She's fine. She's the game's, what was it? She's the game's, she's not a fighter. She basically stays on the sidelines and analyzes enemies. But then again, she doesn't do as good of a job compared to Fuka from Persona 3 or Futaba in Persona 5. And yeah, her social link, just like all the other characters' social links, or most of the characters' social links, it's not that interesting. So yeah, the three main Persona 4 girls, all don't really have that much of, four. The four main Persona girls don't really have that much of an interesting social link, in my opinion. Which one you choose to romance is completely up to you. Maybe there's something deeper to these characters. I don't really care. like I said earlier, the characters in Persona 3 and 5 are just way more likable or just way more interesting than what Persona 4 has going for it. And I think that's pretty apparent too, because Persona 4 had 2 years of development, I think. Overall, Persona 4 was way more rushed compared to Persona 5, which had years of development. And you can kind of feel that way about Persona 4. Because, yeah, I think let's see, Persona 3 came out in 2006. Persona 4 came out in 2008. That's a very short amount of time to make a video game. But, it worked out at the end because Persona 4 ended up being solid. It it is a solid 70-hour video game story, and if you happen to like it, that's awesome. Me, I never really felt that attached to it, to be honest. Um, let's see. I guess I'll do this part. I guess this part I'll talk about the boss fights. The boss fights in Persona 4 aren't that great. Shocker, I know. I mean, they're either very easy or they're just very forgettable. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with these games being easy, you know. But at least with Persona 5, they made the boss fights feel more exciting, feel more epic, you know. And Persona 3, you know, the next boss would make the player curious, like, oh my gosh, what is this boss going to be capable of? Actually, Persona 5 has that too. Persona 4's bosses, besides that one really cool video game boss fight that had that, you know, that old school art style, a lot of the boss fights, especially the final boss in Persona 4, just didn't really interest me that much. Like, literally, one of the bosses is a giant eyeball, and this eyeball is supposed to be like a god or something like that. The game also has a theme of truth, and the truth being covered up by fog. This game is obsessed with fog, and you know, I get it. The god, this evil goddess or god or whatever, wants it's in the mindset that humans are afraid of the truth, and I guess as punishment they must be wiped off the earth or something like that. I don't really care, to be honest. I still feel like Persona 3 and 5 have way better final bosses. Hey, don't get me wrong. Persona 5's Yodabeth, or Yodabeth, however you pronounce it, definitely not as memorable as Nyx, but it still put up a way better fight than Izanagi did, or that giant freaking eyeball. It still felt more tense, you know? And then Persona 4, and then like as a power move, Persona 5 Royal actually gives you what probably is the best villain in the entire franchise, Maruki, who turns out isn't even really a villain. He objectively has good intentions. It's that his good intentions are very flawed. You know, and you could say that. Oh, wait a second, doesn't Izanagi and Nyx have good intentions? No, genocide is never a good intention. I don't care how much poetry you try to wax or whatever. No, it's never a good intention unless you are an insane maniac. But, you know, as a power move, Maruki, you know, all he wanted to do was create a world where everybody's happy. But the problem was that world he would create would essentially just be a total lie, you know? And there are also loopholes and flaws within his own logic as well. But it's interesting, you know, because Persona 5, you spend a lot of the game helping out people by changing the minds of other bad people. You know, you're basically doing something that you can't do in real life. Maruki is basically doing what the Phantom Thieves do, but to a much bigger extreme where he's literally just altering reality just to make people happy. You know, the Phantom Thieves, they don't really alter reality in Maruki's way. The Phantom Thieves, they just go into an alternate universe and change one bad individual person. And this person has to be like a huge scumbag too. Oh man, making this video makes me want to replay Persona 5 too. I think that's all I gotta say. Persona 4, it's not bad or nothing. Just didn't really impress me. Bosses aren't that good. The setting and social links aren't that memorable. Combat, you know, it gets the job done, but I've seen better in Persona 3 and Persona 5. Characters are also done better in Persona 3 and Persona 5. The story is better in Persona 3 and Persona 5. Way too many people actually, it's just a very loud minority. A very loud minority of people get Persona 5 story crap for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. Like, there's this whole talk about how, oh my gosh, Ann Takamaki just becomes a background character after you stop Kabushida. Yeah. And I'm like, are you stupid or something? Did we not play the same game? Like, Ann Takamaki and the other characters are still just as relevant as they were, especially if you keep them equipped into the party. Like, these characters still have confidants that, you know, you can further expand on, you know, and you can still argue that, and you can especially argue that for Persona 4. Like, hey, you might as well say, like, if you think Persona 5 characters, start losing their development after their quote unquote arc, you can apply that same sort of logic to Persona 4. I mean, what does Chie have going for her after you complete her arc with her shadow? But of course, Chie does have more going for her than that. I'm not going to be that person to make a stupid generalization and say some stupid crap like, "Oh, this character has no relevance afterwards." Like, no, like, yes, they do. It's just that Persona 5 executed it better. Oh man, like I wish I was one of those people that got brainwashed by Persona 4. Like I wish I could be one of those people who claim that Persona 4 changed their lives or whatever. And unfortunately, no. Persona 3 and 5 made a bigger impact on me. Like Persona 3 has the most relatable characters. Persona 5 has the most fun turn-based combat gameplay and exploration. Persona 3 and 5 have way better music. Persona 3 and 5 have way more interesting social links. And in fact, let's go back to the social links. Like the social links in Persona 4 are just so forgettable. Like, oh wow, another athletic team social link. Man, but didn't we already get that in Persona 3? What else is Persona 4? There's I. Yeah, she's a total jerk. I don't get why people like her character. You could, a lot of the arguments for her character is that it's intentional. And like I don't care. She's still a total jerk with not much going for her. Now Persona 4 does have some good social links though. Arguably, like these social links I'm about to mention are actually better than the social links than some of the social links in Persona 3 and 5. The social link with Dojima and Nanako, those are really good social links. It genuinely felt good helping Dojima and Nanako become closer and become more comfortable. The problem is that the game doesn't tell you have you don't have a very limited amount of time, but you are on a limited time to complete their social links. Like if you don't complete their social link by I think the end of November, oh well, too bad, so sad. But thankfully the game does give you enough time to complete their social links. Adachi, I liked his social link, even though I feel like Akechi in Persona 5 Royal did it better. What else? What other amazing social links stood out to me in Persona 4? Kanji's social link was actually fine. Uh, oh yeah, people like Naoki's social link and the good for you, I guess. I don't know. It didn't really impact me that much, to be honest. Maybe I'm just soulless or something. Some last things I take issue with, and these are mostly nitpicks. I don't like how there's 5 social stats that you need to increase. In Persona 3, there was only 3 of them. And in Persona 5, while the game does have 5 social stats, they were way easier to complete. In Persona 4, trying to max out these social stats is a grind. Like, I truly feel like Persona 4 or Persona 4 Golden is the only Persona game where playing on New Game Plus is a mandatory to get all the social links. Like, yeah, is there a way to get all the social links without New Game Plus in Persona 4? Of course, but you're going to have to use a very strict guide. And in my opinion, having to use a guide to play a video game is just not the right way to play a video game. Like, who wants to do homework when playing a game? The purpose of a video game is to be fun. And plus, a guide would actually spoil, stuff for new players. I also don't like how the characters' personas look. I think the persona designs are very goofy or just very forgettable. The dungeons in Persona 4, they're fine, but they're mostly just hallways. And Persona 3 Tartarus was like way more scary. Or not scary, but way less predictable. And Persona 5, the dungeons look beautiful and they were fun to explore. And, find chests and whatnot. Persona 4 is just a hallway. Persona 4 also started the trend of characters having to basically do social links with them in order for their personas to evolve. In Persona 3, I liked it way more when the characters' personas would evolve on their own, instead of just relying on the protagonist. Anyway, that's all I gotta say.